Han Wu stood at the tall windows of the Terran embassy, watching three suns set over the alien city of Nexus Prime. The glass was thick and specially made to protect humans from the strange radiations of this distant world. For 30 years he had served as Earth's ambassador to the galaxy. For 30 years he had followed the same rules that kept humanity safe. The rules were simple. Humans could not leave their home solar system. Humans could not build warships. Humans could not contact other species without permission. These rules had kept peace for 3,000 years. Han Wu had always believed they were good rules. Today, everything changed. The crystal message arrived at sunset. It came through the official channels sealed with the marks of the Valdari hegemony. The Valdari ruled most of the galaxy. They were tall, gray creatures with 6 arms and minds that worked faster than any human could imagine. They had kept the peace for longer than human civilization had existed. Han Wu picked up the crystal with shaking hands. When he touched it, words appeared in his mind. The message was short and cold. The Armistice of Sol is ended. Your species will face judgment. You have 7 days to prepare, that was all. No explanation, no reason given. After 3,000 years of peace, the aliens wanted war. Yun Hai burst through the embassy doors before Han Wu could call for her. She was young for a military officer, but her eyes held the hardness of someone who had seen too much. Her black uniform bore the silver stars of Earth's Defense Corps, though there had been nothing to defend against for centuries. Sir, we're picking up massive fleet movements, she said. Every species in the hegemony is mobilizing. This isn't a small operation. Han Wu handed her the crystal message. Yun He's face went pale as she read it. 3,000 years, she whispered. Why now? Before Han Wu could answer, Park Jin emerged from the elevator that led to the embassy's deep levels. The old archivist looked tired, but his eyes were bright with the fever of discovery. He carried a small datapad and several ancient books. I know why, Park Jin said. I've been studying the old records for decades. The ones from first contact, the ones they tried to make us forget. He set the books on Han Wu's desk. The covers were worn and yellow with age. Some were written in languages that no longer existed. The official story says humanity was young and violent when we first met the aliens. Park Jin continued. They say we were dangerous, so they put us in our solar system to keep us safe and keep others safe from us. That's what every human child learns in school, Yun Hai said. Park Jin shook his head. It's a lie. All of it. He opened the first book to a page covered with numbers and star charts. Look at this. Battle records from 3024, the year of first contact. The Valdari sent a fleet of 10,000 ships to Earth. Know how many came back? Han Wu and Yun Hai waited. 300, Park Jin said. 300 ships out of 10,000. And those only escaped because humanity let them go. The room fell silent except for the hum of the air recyclers. That's impossible, Yun Hai said. Humans barely had spaceflight in 3024. We were using chemical rockets. That's what they wanted us to believe, Park Jin said. He turned to another page showing technical drawings of strange machines. But look at this. Weapon designs from that period. Energy sources we can barely understand today. Humanity wasn't primitive when we met the aliens. We were something else entirely. What happened to that technology? Han Wu asked. Hidden, Park Jin said. All of it. When the Armistice was signed, humanity agreed to forget, to pretend we were simple, to live quiet lives in our solar system while the galaxy moved on without us. But why would we do that? Park Jin closed the book and looked at both of them. Because the alternative was the complete destruction of every intelligent species in the galaxy, including us. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the embassy. Red lights flashed as automated systems activated. Li Su's voice came over the speakers. All senior staff to the communications center. Priority Alpha message incoming. They rushed to the basement levels where the communications equipment waited. Li Su stood before a massive array of screens and quantum transmitters. Her fingers moved quickly over holographic controls that most humans could not even see properly. It's from Earth, she said. Deep encryption. Military channels that have been silent for 3 centuries. That's impossible, Yun Hai said. Those networks were dismantled after the Armistice. No, Li Su said, her voice filled with wonder. They were just hidden, waiting. The main screen flickered and showed the face of a man none of them recognized. He wore a uniform that looked like no military force any of them knew. Behind him they could see stars and the curve of a planet. Terran Embassy, this is Command Station 7, the man said. We've been monitoring your situation. Project Sleepless Eye is now active. Project Sleepless Eye? Hanwoo asked. Deep space monitoring stations positioned throughout the galaxy, the man explained. We've been watching and waiting for 3,000 years. Today the watching ends. Who are you? Yoon-hee demanded. The man smiled, and for a moment he looked almost sad. We're the part of humanity that never forgot who we really are. New screens came alive around them. Star charts appeared showing dozens of points of light scattered across the galaxy. Each point was marked with human symbols. You're not alone out there, the man continued. You never were. When the Armistice was signed, some of us stayed hidden. Some of us kept building. Some of us kept watching. How many? Lee Su asked. Enough, the man said. Earth has received the Valdari message. We're sending our response now. The screens showed a single message being transmitted across space to Earth. It was simple and direct. The cage is opening. Remember who we are? The man's image faded, but the screens remained active. For the first time in 3,000 years, the embassy was connected to a network that spanned the entire galaxy. Hidden stations powered up one by one, each showing views of alien worlds and fleets. Hanwoo realized that everything he had believed about humanity was wrong. They had never been prisoners in their solar system. They had been predators choosing to sleep. Now something had woken them up. What happens now? Yoon-hee asked. Hanwoo looked at the screens showing alien fleets moving toward human space. Thousands of ships from dozens of species all coming to judge humanity. Now we find out what 3,000 years of patience has taught us, he said. Kimbo walked through the halls beneath Cheyenne Mountain, her footsteps echoing in corridors that had been carved from solid rock 3,000 years ago. The mountain had been rebuilt many times since then, but it still served the same purpose. It was where Earth made its most important decisions. The War Council chamber was exactly as her grandfather had described it. Circular walls lined with screens that could show any part of human space. A single table in the center where the leaders of humanity could gather. Today that table held the fate of every human alive. The message from the Valdari hegemony had reached Earth 6 hours ago. Kimbo had called together everyone who mattered. Military commanders, scientists, engineers, and philosophers. All the people who had spent their lives preparing for this day. Choi Min was the first to speak. The commander of the Solar Defense Fleet looked younger than his 60 years, thanks to medical advances that most humans took for granted. His uniform was simple blue cloth, but the insignia on his shoulder showed his true rank. Madam President, we've been tracking alien fleet movements for the past day, he said. Every major species is mobilizing. Conservative estimate puts their combined forces at over 50,000 ships. And our forces? Kimbo asked. Choi Min smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. That depends on how you count. He activated the room's main display. The screens showed the solar system, but not as most humans knew it. This version showed the truth that had been hidden for centuries. The asteroid belt contains over 2,000 industrial platforms, Choi Min continued, each one larger than the biggest cities on Earth. Mars isn't just a colony world anymore. It's a fortress that could hold off any invasion force. The display zoomed in on Jupiter's moons. Instead of empty ice balls, they showed massive construction yards filled with ships that gleamed like silver fish. The gas giants hide our primary shipyards, Choi Min said. We've been building for 3,000 years. Not just ships, but weapons and defenses that the galaxy has never seen. Song Hai leaned forward in her chair. The director of the Human Enhancement Project was small and quiet, but everyone in the room respected her genius. The ships are only part of it, she said. We've been enhancing our people too. Genetic modification? Kimbo asked. No, nothing like that. The aliens would have detected genetic changes, but cybernetic integration so advanced it looks completely natural. Enhanced reflexes that let humans react faster than any alien species. Improved cognitive processing that lets us think through problems in seconds instead of minutes. Song Hae gestured to her own eyes, which looked perfectly normal. I can see across 17 different spectrums of light. I can process data streams that would overwhelm a Valdari computer. And I'm not special. Every human who works in critical systems has similar enhancements. How many people know about this? Kimbo asked. Everyone who needs to, Song Hae replied. We've been very careful about who gets what information. But when the time comes, every human will know exactly what they need to do. Bae-hyun had been silent until now. The admiral was old even by modern standards, but his mind was still sharp. He commanded forces that officially didn't exist. "Madam President, may I show you something that will change how you think about this war?" Kimbo nodded. Bae-hyun activated a different display. At first it showed empty space around Saturn's rings. Then he entered a command and suddenly the space filled with ships. Hundreds of them, thousands, all hanging in the void like ghosts made solid. "The Ghost Fleet," Bae-hyun said simply. 7,000 ships that exist in parallel dimensions, invisible to every sensor the aliens have ever built. Kimbo stared at the display. "How long have they been there?" "The first ones were launched 800 years ago," Bae-hyun said. "We've been improving the technology ever since. These ships have been mapping alien territories, studying their weaknesses, learning their languages and customs." "What do you know about their capabilities?" Bae-hyun's expression grew grim. "Everything. We know the exact location of every major alien fleet. We know their weapon systems, their defensive capabilities, their supply lines. We've been watching them for centuries." Nam-yu spoke up from the far end of the table. The general looked like a simple soldier, but Kimbo knew he was one of the most brilliant military minds humanity had ever produced. "Madam President, the aliens are expecting to fight the same humans they met 3,000 years ago," he said. "They remember us as brave but primitive. They think they're coming to put down a rebellion. And they're wrong, completely wrong. We've spent 3 millennia studying their military doctrines. They fight like most species do. Big fleets, direct confrontation, overwhelming force. It works against other aliens because everyone fights the same way." Nam-yu activated another display showing battle simulations. "Humans don't fight that way anymore. We've developed something the galaxy has never seen. Asymmetric warfare combined with perfect intelligence and weapons they can't even detect until it's too late." "What kind of weapons?" "The kind that turn matter into energy, and energy back into matter. The kind that can phase between dimensions. The kind that make our ancestors' nuclear weapons look like thrown rocks." Kimbo stood and walked to the main display showing Earth. The planet looked peaceful from space, but she knew the truth. Every continent held cities of hundreds of millions of people. The orbital platforms around Earth housed billions more. "How many humans are there really?" she asked. 400 billion in the solar system, Choi Min replied. "Another 50 billion in the hidden colonies that the aliens don't know about." "Hidden colonies?" "In other solar systems. Places we've been preparing for 3,000 years. The aliens think we're trapped in one star system. They're wrong about that too." Kimbo looked around the table at the faces of humanity's leaders. These people had spent their entire lives preparing for war with beings that had once nearly destroyed their species. But they weren't the same humans who had faced that first alien fleet. They were something new. Something the galaxy had never seen before. "Send the message," she said. Lee Soo, who had been quiet in the corner, activated the communication systems. Her fingers moved over controls that connected Earth to monitoring stations across the galaxy. The same stations that had watched alien movements for centuries. The message went out on all frequencies in all languages. Not just to the alien fleets moving toward Earth, but to every world in the galaxy. To the Valdari hegemony and all member species of the Galactic Confederation. "This is Earth. We have received your declaration of war. We accept." Kimbo paused, looking at the faces around her. "For 3,000 years you believed you had contained us. You were wrong. You didn't contain us. You gave us time to grow, time to learn, time to become something you've never faced before." Another pause. "You wanted to judge us. Very well, but remember this. You're not judging the humans you met before. You're judging what we became while you weren't watching." The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Kimbo looked at her advisors, people who had dedicated their lives to this moment. "How long until their fleets reach us?" 6 days, Choi Min replied. "Then we have 6 days to show them what 3,000 years of human patience looks like when it finally runs out." Outside the mountain, across Earth and throughout the solar system, hidden systems activated. Messages went out to every human alive. Not orders for war, but reminders of who they really were. The children were about to show their parents what they had learned. Supreme Admiral Thalgoric stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the human solar system grow larger on the displays. His 6 arms worked the control surfaces with practiced ease, coordinating a fleet of 50,000 vessels from 17 different species. The Valdari commander was old, even by the standards of his long-lived race. He had been alive during the first human contact 3,000 years ago. He remembered the brief war that had shocked the galaxy. He also remembered the peace that followed. Now the peace was ending. Status report, he commanded his bridge crew. All fleet elements are in position. His tactical officer replied. We have complete sensor coverage of the human system. No significant military presence detected. What about their orbital platforms? Mostly civilian infrastructure. Some industrial facilities in the asteroid belt, but nothing that poses a threat to the fleet. Thalgorix nodded. This was exactly what he had expected. 3,000 years of isolation had made the humans weak. They had forgotten how to fight. This would be swift and clean, sir. We're receiving a transmission from the inner system, the communications officer announced. Put it on the main screen. The display showed a single human ship floating in the void between Neptune and Pluto. It was small, maybe 300 meters long, with clean lines that suggested advanced engineering. But it was alone, one ship against 50,000. A human face appeared on the screen. A young woman with short black hair and calm eyes. She wore a simple blue uniform with captain's insignia. This is Captain O'Sun of the frigate Defiance, she said. You are trespassing in human space. Please state your intentions. Thalgorix almost laughed. After 3,000 years, humans still had the same foolish courage. Human captain, I am Supreme Admiral Thalgorix of the Veldari hegemony. Your species stands accused of violating the Armistice of Sol. Surrender immediately or face the consequences. O'Sun's expression didn't change. Admiral, you kept us in a cage for 3,000 years. Thank you for teaching us patience. Before Thalgorix could respond, the human ship simply vanished, not destroyed by weapons fire, not jumping to faster-than-light travel, just gone as if it had never been there. Tactical report. Sir, we lost all sensor contact. The ship just disappeared. That's impossible. Find it. But before his crew could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the flagship. Emergency lights flashed red as automated systems detected problems throughout the massive vessel. Multiple system failures on decks 40 through 60, the damage control officer reported. Life support is failing. Gravity generators are offline. We're losing navigational control. What's the cause? Unknown, sir. Our repair teams are reporting strange readings. On the bridge displays, Thalgorix could see similar reports coming in from ships throughout his fleet. Dozens of vessels were reporting mysterious system failures. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to cause serious problems. Then the reports started coming in from his boarding teams. Sir, Security Team 7 reports intruders on Deck 55, his security chief announced. They're describing the attackers as unusual. Unusual how? They move through solid matter, sir. They appear to be human, but they're not behaving like any humans we've encountered before. Thalgorix felt a chill run through his body. Stories from the first human contact mentioned similar reports. Humans who could do impossible things. Humans who fought like no other species in the galaxy. Deploy all security teams. Seal off affected decks, but it was already too late. Throughout his fleet, similar scenes were playing out. Small teams of humans were appearing inside alien ships, moving through bulkheads and armor plating like they weren't there. They weren't trying to kill the crews. Instead, they were systematically destroying critical systems. Major Limte materialized on the flagship's bridge, stepping through the main display as if it were made of water. His appearance was human, but wrong in ways that made Thalgorix's compound eyes hurt to look at. The Major's movements were too fluid, too perfect, like a machine wearing human form. Admiral, Limte said politely, you should know that your fleet is now completely surrounded. That's impossible, Thalgorix replied. Our sensors show empty space, Limte smiled. Your sensors show what we allow them to show. The bridge displays suddenly changed, showing a very different view of the human solar system. Instead of empty space, the screens revealed weapons platforms hidden in asteroids, defense stations built into moon-sized installations, and energy fields that turned the space between planets into a maze of death. But the most shocking sight was the ships. Thousands of human vessels appeared on the sensors, materializing from nowhere. They surrounded the alien fleet on all sides, boxing them in completely. We call them the Ghost Fleet, Limte explained. They've been watching your species for centuries, learning your weaknesses, studying your tactics. Wait, how is this possible? Thalgorix demanded. 3,000 years is a long time, Admiral. Long enough to develop technologies your species can't even imagine. Before Thalgorix could respond, his communications officer called out in panic, "Sir, we're receiving reports from the home fleets. Human ships have appeared around our colony worlds. New displays activated, showing scenes from across Valdari space. Human vessels hung in the void above alien cities. Their weapons trained on orbital platforms and defense stations. The ships were sleek and beautiful, but they radiated menace like living things." "Impossible," Thalgorix whispered. "We would have detected any ships leaving the human system." "You detected what we wanted you to detect," Limte said. "While you were watching our front door, we were walking through your backyard." Fleet Admiral Quan Do's voice came through every communication system in the alien fleet simultaneously. His words were translated into 17 different languages. "Valdari vessels, this is the human defense fleet. Your worlds are surrounded. Your colonies are defenseless. Your supply lines are cut. This engagement is over." Thalgorix looked at his tactical displays. His 50,000 ships were trapped in human space, while human forces held his homeworld hostage. In one move, humanity had turned the war around completely. "What do you want?" he asked. "Nothing you're prepared to give," Quan Do replied. "But we'll start with your complete surrender. Never. The hegemony will never surrender to humans." "Then watch," Limte said. On the main display, one of the smaller Valdari ships simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed in an explosion of fire and metal, just gone, as if every atom had been carefully taken apart and scattered to the solar wind. "That was a demonstration," Quan Do's voice said. "We can do the same thing to every ship in your fleet. We can do it to every Valdari world, but we won't." "Why not?" "Because that's not who we are anymore," Limte said. 3,000 years ago, you were afraid of what humans might become." "You were right to be afraid. We became your equals." Thalgorix looked around his bridge at crew members who no longer met his eyes. For the first time in 3 millennia, the Valdari hegemony faced an enemy they couldn't defeat. "Your move, Admiral." Osun's voice came through the speakers. Her ship reappeared on the sensors exactly where it had been before vanishing. 1 ship against 50,000. But now Thalgorix understood that the numbers didn't matter. Humanity had spent 3,000 years learning to fight a war that could destroy galaxies. Now they were showing remarkable restraint by not using everything they had learned. The hunters had become the hunted, and they were about to learn what it meant to face predators who chose mercy over conquest. War Marshal Vethkara stood in the command center on Nexus Prime, surrounded by holographic displays showing fleet movements across the galaxy. The Valdari military leader was younger than Thalgorix, but her reputation for tactical brilliance was known throughout the Confederation. The initial attack on the human system had failed completely. 50,000 ships trapped, their crews held hostage by technology that defied understanding, but Vethkara was not discouraged. If anything, she was excited. Finally, a worthy opponent. "Status of the reserve fleets?" she asked her staff. 1,200,000 vessels now en route to human space, her aide replied. "Every member species has contributed their entire military force, and the humans, still contained in their home system. Our intelligence suggests they have perhaps 10,000 ships total." Vethkara nodded. The humans were clever, but they had made a critical mistake. They had revealed their capabilities too early. Now the galaxy knew what they faced, and numbers would tell. "Deploy the Zerian battle groups to intercept any human reinforcements," she ordered. "Position the Kethtai fleet to blockade their supply lines. This ends now." But even as she spoke, reports were coming in from across Confederation space. Reports that made no sense. Colonel Shin A walked through the Zerion capital city as if she owned it. The human wore simple clothing that made her look like a tourist, but the security cameras couldn't track her movements properly. She seemed to phase in and out of reality, appearing in one location and instantly materializing somewhere else entirely. Behind her walked 12 other humans, each one moving with the same impossible grace. They carried no visible weapons, but the Zerian police officers who tried to stop them simply collapsed unconscious. "Citizens of Zerion Prime," Shine said, her voice somehow reaching every communication device on the planet simultaneously. "Your government has declared war on humanity. We have come to explain why this was a mistake." She gestured, and the air above the city filled with images, battle footage from 3,000 years ago, showing human ships destroying alien fleets with weapons that turned matter into pure energy. Technical specifications that proved human technology was centuries ahead of anything the galaxy had ever seen. Your leaders told you that humans were primitive and dangerous, Shine continued. Half of that was true. We are dangerous, but not to those who wish us no harm. On a dozen other worlds, similar scenes played out. Human soldiers appeared in alien cities not as conquerors but as teachers. They showed the citizens documentation that their governments had hidden for millennia. Young-Ho stood before the Galactic Assembly on Nexus Prime, broadcasting to every world in Confederation space. The human diplomat wore formal robes, but his words cut like weapons. For 3,000 years your leaders have prepared for human extinction, he said. Not containment, not peace, extinction. The displays behind him showed classified government documents, military planning files, and recorded conversations between alien leaders. All of it proved the same thing. The quarantine of humanity had always been intended as a temporary measure, leading to complete genocide. Trade agreements that mention keeping the humans contained until final measures can be implemented. Young-Ho read from the documents. Scientific papers discussing the human problem and its ultimate solution. Military doctrines for something called the Final Cleansing Protocol. In the assembly hall, representatives from dozens of species listened in growing horror. Many had never seen these documents before. Their own governments had kept them secret. You were not protecting the galaxy from humanity, Young-Ho continued. You were participating in planned murder. Dr. Kang Yoon had a different approach. The xenopsychologist appeared on alien homeworlds not to threaten or educate, but simply to help. On Valdari Prime, she assisted with a plague that had been killing children for years. On Kethtai, she helped solve transportation problems that had puzzled their engineers for decades. Everywhere she went, she demonstrated that humans were not the monsters their governments had described. Citizens who met her found it difficult to believe that such a gentle, helpful person could be the enemy. The psychological impact was devastating. How do you maintain a war when your own people begin to admire the enemy? The turning point came when Captain Yumi and her crew allowed themselves to be captured by a Valdari patrol ship. The aliens expected to interrogate dangerous prisoners. Instead, they found themselves having dinner with people who seemed genuinely interested in their lives and cultures. Why are you treating us so well? The Valdari captain asked after 3 days of pleasant conversation. Because you're not our enemy, Yumi replied. You're victims of the same lie we've been fighting against for 3,000 years. What lie? That some species are more important than others. That some people deserve freedom while others deserve cages. Within a week, half the Valdari crew was questioning orders from their high command. Within a month, similar scenes were playing out on prison ships throughout the Confederation fleet. Back on Nexus Prime, Vethkara watched her carefully planned war fall apart in ways she had never imagined. Her fleets were intact, her weapons were superior in number, but her soldiers were beginning to refuse orders. Marshal, the Novan Collective has withdrawn from the Confederation, her aide reported. They're declaring neutrality and demanding the immediate release of all human prisoners. That's treason, Vethkara snarled. The Sylvanti Republic is considering similar measures. They're saying this war was started under false pretenses. More reports came in. The Kethtai were demanding a full investigation into the Final Cleansing Protocol. The Zarian government had fallen after their own citizens learned about the secret anti-human policies. How many species are still committed to the war effort? Vethkara asked. Her aide checked the latest reports. 14, Marshal. Down from 37 yesterday. Vethkara stared at the strategic displays that no longer showed a galaxy united against humanity, but a confederation tearing itself apart. The humans had done something no military strategist had thought possible. They had turned their enemies against each other without firing a shot. Marshal, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet, her communications officer announced. Put it through. Admiral Quan Do appeared on the main screen, sitting in what looked like a simple office rather than a military command center. Marshal Vethkara, I believe it's time we talked. I have nothing to say to you, human. Then listen. Your war is falling apart. Half your allies have abandoned you. Your remaining fleets are surrounded by forces you can't defeat. Your homeworlds are defenseless. State your terms, Vethkara said through clenched teeth. Unconditional surrender of all Confederation military forces. Full disclosure of all anti-human policies and planning. Dissolution of the hegemony system and establishment of a new galactic government based on equality, rather than hierarchy. Impossible. The galaxy will never accept human rule. Quan Do smiled. Who said anything about human rule? We don't want to conquer you, Marshal. We want to free you. Free us from what? From the same system that turned you into monsters. The same system that made you believe genocide was acceptable policy. Vethkara looked around her command center at staff officers who no longer met her eyes. The war she had planned to win through overwhelming force was being lost through something she didn't understand. Human idealism. You have 24 hours to consider our terms, Quan Do said. After that, we begin demonstrating what 3,000 years of human patience looks like when it runs out completely. The transmission ended, leaving Vethkara alone with the wreckage of her empire, and the growing realization that humanity had already won a war she was still trying to fight. The Grand Assembly Hall on Nexus Prime had never seen a gathering like this one. Representatives from every intelligent species in the galaxy sat in the vast circular chamber, their different forms creating a tapestry of evolutionary diversity. But today they all shared the same expression of uncertainty. Admiral Quan Do walked through the center of the hall, flanked by a small group of humans. They carried no weapons and wore simple diplomatic robes, but everyone in the chamber could feel the power they represented. Behind them, the massive doors sealed shut with a sound like thunder. War Marshal Vethkara sat in the Valdari section, her 6 arms folded in a gesture of barely contained rage. Around her, the remnants of the Confederation Military Command looked like broken toys. Their grand alliance had crumbled in weeks, torn apart by revelations and defections. Honored delegates, Han Wu began, taking his place at the speaker's podium. We are here to discuss the future of galactic civilization. The future has already been decided, Vethkara interrupted. Your fleet holds our worlds hostage. What more do you want? We want you to understand what you're really fighting, Quan Do replied calmly. Chief Engineer Ro Bin stepped forward, holding a device that looked like a simple metal cube. Before we continue, I think you should see something that will help clarify the situation. She pressed a control on the cube, and the entire assembly hall shimmered like water. The walls became transparent, revealing not the city of Nexus Prime, but something that made several delegates cry out in fear. They were floating in space, surrounded by a fleet of human vessels that stretched beyond the horizon, ships of every size and design, from small fighters to constructions that dwarfed entire moons, weapons platforms that looked like geometric stars, their surfaces crackling with energies that hurt to look at directly. This is the Ghost Fleet, Ro Bin explained. For 3,000 years, we've been building in dimensions your sensors cannot detect. What you see here represents less than 10% of our total military capacity. The Kethtai delegate raised one of his 4 hands. How many ships do you have? Enough, Quan Do answered. Enough to end this war in minutes if that was our goal? Then why haven't you? Demanded the Zerion representative. Because that's not who we are, Han Wu said. He activated another display, showing scenes from across the galaxy. Human ships providing aid to alien colonies, human scientists sharing medical technology, human teachers working with alien children. For 3,000 years, you've been afraid of what humanity might become, he continued. You were right to be afraid. We became something your leaders never expected. What's that supposed to mean? Vethkara asked. Moonji stepped forward carrying a collection of ancient data crystals. The xenologist had spent her entire career studying the First Contact period, and her findings had changed everything humanity thought they knew about themselves. The official history says that humanity was quarantined because we were violent and primitive, she began. But that's not what really happened. She activated the historical displays showing battle footage from 3,000 years ago. But this wasn't the sanitized version that both humans and aliens had been taught in school. Look closely at these battles, Moonji said. Notice what the human ships are doing. The assembled delegates watched as human vessels moved between alien fleets. But instead of destroying enemy ships, they were targeting something else entirely. Slave ships, Moonji explained. The original Confederation wasn't the peaceful alliance you were taught about. It was a slave empire, with the Valdari as the ruling class and dozens of other species as their property. The chamber erupted in shocked voices as the truth became clear. The first human-alien war hadn't been about human aggression. It had been about human liberation of enslaved peoples. The species that allied with humanity 3,000 years ago weren't our enemies, Moonji continued. They were the ones we freed. The Novan Collective, the Sylvanti Republic, the Zerion Commonwealth. All of them were slave races until humanity broke their chains. Sioda, the historical analyst, took over the presentation. Her research had uncovered the final piece of the puzzle. The Great Suppression of 3024 wasn't humanity's defeat, she announced. It was humanity's choice. New displays showed classified communications from the end of the First War. Human fleet commanders receiving orders to withdraw. Human diplomats negotiating the terms of their own quarantine. Faced with a galaxy-wide war that would have killed billions, humanity chose exile, Seo Da explained. We accepted quarantine in exchange for the promise that the freed species would be allowed to govern themselves. That's impossible, Vethkara protested. The Confederation has maintained order for 3 millennia. Order built on a lie, Han Wu replied. The promise was broken within decades. The freed species were re-enslaved, their histories rewritten, their independence erased. The Valdari returned to their old ways, ruling through fear and controlling through deception. And humanity watched it all happen, Quan Do added. From our hidden monitoring stations, we saw every broken promise, every return to slavery, every step back toward the empire we had died to destroy. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. The quarantine hadn't been about containing human violence. It had been about preventing human justice. Captain O-Sun stepped forward for the final revelation. Her ship, the Defiance, had been the first to face the alien fleet, and she had become a symbol of humanity's return. 3,000 years ago, your ancestors were afraid of human ideals, she said. They were afraid that other species would see humans as an example of what they could become. They were afraid that the age of kings and slaves would end. They were right to be afraid, Quan Do continued, because that age ends today. The display showed human fleets positioned around every major world in Confederation space. Not as conquerors, but as liberators. Already, slave populations were rising against their masters. Oppressed species were demanding the rights that humanity had died to give them centuries before. This is what we offer, Han Wu said. Not human rule, but human ideals. Not conquest, but cooperation. Not an empire, but a true confederation where every species has an equal voice. Vethkara stood, her form shaking with rage and desperation. You're destroying everything we've built. We're finishing what we started 3,000 years ago, O-Sun replied. The war marshal made one final, desperate move, reaching for a weapon concealed in her robes. But before she could draw it, her own officers stepped forward to stop her. Captain O-Sun recognized one of the Valdari officers. During the war, she had learned that many Valdari were themselves victims of their own empire's hierarchy. Not all of them supported the old ways. The age of species superiority is over, the Valdari officer announced. Some of us are ready for something better. President Kim Bo's voice came through the chamber's communication systems, broadcasting to every world in the galaxy. To all intelligent species, human and alien alike. Today we begin a new age, an age where no one species rules over others, where freedom and cooperation replace fear and domination. The Terran Compact is now in effect. Every species that chooses equality over empire, cooperation over conquest, will find a place in the new galactic government. Han Wu looked around the chamber at delegates who were seeing their universe transformed before their eyes. For 3,000 years, you kept us in a cage because you were afraid of what we might become, he said. You were right to be afraid. He paused, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of species. We became your equals. Outside the assembly hall, across the galaxy, the age of empires ended. Not through conquest or violence, but through the simple human conviction that all intelligent life deserved freedom. The children had finally grown up, and they were teaching their parents that there was a better way to live among the stars. In the vast silence of space, human ships began broadcasting a new message to every world in the galaxy. Not a demand for surrender, but an invitation to join something that had never existed before. A true democracy of species, guided by the ideals that humanity had spent 3 millennia perfecting. The galaxy would never be the same.